Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Data Dojo. I have another guest, a very special dear friend as well, Michael Bachman. He's the head of AI strategy at Boomi Innovation Group at Boomi. I've had the pleasure to work with him on some initiatives like filing some patents and being part of the patent committee. And also, he invited me to a conference which he is an advisory board member of called PACT. And apart from doing the awesome things he does at Boomi, he's had 20 years plus experience in the IT industry, has a background in linguistics and also computer science. He's been pivotal in driving research and innovation at Boomi with what I have seen, and also has been taking a lot of initiatives outside in propagating how important AI and explainable AI and responsible AI is. So I'm really happy and glad to have you on the podcast. Welcome, Michael.
Oh, Swagata, thanks for having me here. This is going to be a lot of fun. I just know it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm really happy to talk to you and getting to know you a little bit better. So, my first question is like, I talked briefly about your experience and I might have missed certain things which you do, but like reflecting on your journey throughout your career, which is an awesome 20 plus years, how do you find yourself in this current role of Boomi Innovation and your, I'm sure your day-to-day job is very different and it cannot be like put down in four or five bullets, but could you elaborate on reflecting on your journey and how you find your niche in your current role at Boomi?
Yeah, so, this is one of those jobs that probably wouldn't have existed about 20 or 25 years ago. And it comes from a culmination of a variety of different happy accidents, I would say. So I started out my career, as you rightly pointed out. I have a degree in actually it's German language and linguistics as well as international politics, which has nothing to
Mm,
do with IT. I did take a number of computer science courses as an undergrad, but we didn't call it computer science back then. It was part of the math department at the
right.
small university I went to. But I knew that I wanted to go into tech very
Mm,
early. And unfortunately, at the time in the late 90s, I didn't have sort of the degree that was required for going into engineering. Certainly not.
mm-hmm,
So I started out in sales, and I knew what I didn't want to do after going through that experience. And I didn't understand there was this role of like a pre-sales engineer at the time. But I eventually got into engineering through a variety of other happy accidents. But I'll say
mm-hmm,
this, one thing that sales did teach me early on was how to interact with a customer, how to understand what problems looked like in the real world. And it
mm-hmm,
gave me a real good picture for the rest of my career and shaped the
mm-hmm,
rest of my career on the kinds of questions I need to ask in order to understand how people who use products
mm-hmm,
really need things to work and what
right.
happens when they don't work well. And so understanding how people use things, products, services,
Mm-hmm,
features, that was really foundational, and provided a great underpinning to what would become a much more lucrative technical career for me.
right.
So then what happened, like I said, I got into pre-sales engineering by a series of happy accidents. And one of the ways that I got there was something that um, I don't know, for me, it was just learning as much as possible. I have this
Mm-hmm,
insatiable curiosity about my world that I live in, and I read a lot. And I also like to learn and apply. So you put those things together, and I learned how to break things really fast.
mm-hmm,
And even as a kid, I would, like many of your audience probably, we used to tear things apart as kids and put them back together again, as
right.
proper engineers would. And whether you're doing that with a physical machine or you're doing something in a virtual space, that was important to me. So I became a pre-sales engineer, over the course of several years in storage
Mm-hmm,
systems. So I got really, really, I really wanted to understand how storage systems of various kinds worked,
right.
and started out in sales and then transitioned into pre-sales. And then from there, became a principal pre-sales architect, and a principal engineer, worked with engineering and product in
Mm,
addition to the field.
right.
Um, worked on performance and performance analytics. I wrote my own programs for customers so that they could anticipate storage growth, impact in their data centers. And this was in the late 2000, like 2008, 2009, 2010 time period. And then went on to Dell. So the company that Dell acquired, that I was working for, had a real big problem that they were trying to solve. And a colleague of
Right.
mine and I ended up writing a book
Mm.
inside of Dell on how to size and
Oh,
design storage systems. And
wow.
so
Okay.
with this book, it sort of catapulted my career at that I couldn't have anticipated before.
Mm.
And so with that particular publication, that was an internal publication, I started going on tours around the world to educate engineers on how to size and
Mm.
design storage systems. Using, I provided all of the math in the book to be able to do that effectively. And really, from that point forward, went into a variety of different spaces. So started out on the hardware side, and then
Mm.
in 2018 came over to Boomi, and really started working in middleware at that point. And here I am.
Wow.
So I've been helping pre-sales, but I've also been working with engineering and product and marketing.
Mm.
And certainly, I really like being out in front of the market and being with the
Hmm.
customer. And
Yeah.
so that is what kind of my role is today. So I've got 3 job functions.
Yeah.
So one is I'm the voice of Boomi to the market.
Hmm.
Um, I'm the voice of the market back to Boomi. And then I'm also, making sure that people really understand how the art of the possible and the
Yeah.
reality of the feasible meet. And
Mm.
so some call that evangelism. I call that taking really hard concepts and making it easy for any audience to understand so that they can use their genius to achieve
Yeah.
the outcomes they want. That's what
Yeah.
I.
Yeah. To what you just described, and I had another guest previously who was a customer facing data scientist, and these were roles that are very new in the field. So I'm curious to know that back in when I was starting my career, when somebody asked me, I was like, I was very excited by the thought of being a generalist, but you never have those kind of roles like where you can also build models or you can also have customer facing interactions. Those are typically two different roles. So listening to your experience and a couple of other guests, the way the future of AI rolls, of course, there are going to be experts and people who are going to be building those LLMs, fine tuning, and doing the really cool AI technical work. But we need people who understand the technologies well enough to be able to describe it to the customers, get their feedback. And with your background in sales and linguistics and computer science, all of this makes you a really good candidate. So I want to know, in your opinion, like what are some underappreciated skills? Like we all know that, hey, you want to learn AI, do these courses. But there are some underrepresentative skills and qualities and roles which people are not aware of. Any thoughts on that? And what are the skills you think could be people could, apart from the core technical skills, think about and build a career in AI rather than just being an AI engineer?
Yeah, for sure. That's a lot to unpack. So let's take a couple of pieces at a time. So like you said, and I forgot to throw in computer science. I did study computer science as well, but computers and information technology. But that said, do you need to have all of these diverse skill sets in order to be effective in whatever role it is you choose to do? The answer to that question lies within you as a person. Whatever fulfills you is probably what you should follow. So I'll start with that. But
Mm.
when it comes to skills that we should have independent of role and function, personally, I think going back to logic is key. Understanding how to troubleshoot and how to get to a root cause of a problem. Um,
Right.
whatever method you go about doing that.
Mm.
Important to really have a system in place, in my opinion. That way, as I heard a podcast from Lex Friedman, a couple of days ago, where the guest is the CEO of Perplexity, and
Mm.
anyway, one thing he said in his role and in the type of build that he wants for his platform, Perplexity, is to separate logic from knowledge. And
Mm.
I found
Right.
that an insightful comment
Right.
because yes, it's one thing to have knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing on how to use logic to apply it to ever-changing, the ever-changing environment around us. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we are good at synthesizing that which we learn, that which we experience,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a methodology by which to do that, good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say really understand the why behind the problem. And especially as AI becomes more sophisticated and, as we become sort of the consumers of whatever AI is going to tell us, I think
Mm-hmm.
we need to be able to, especially to determine when AI hallucinates or not, as an
Right.
example, we need to be able to sort of logic our way through an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the better we are at that, the better off we're going to be. So there are mathematical approaches to this. There are linguistic approaches to this. There are, symbolic
Mm-hmm.
representations to this. There are
Yeah.
a whole variety of ways that philosophical ways that we can approach logic
Mm-hmm.
that don't necessarily have to start with a math background or a CS background or an engineering background. They can start with a liberal arts background. And one
Mm-hmm.
thing, Swagata, that I tell groups of liberal artists, I was just speaking about a month ago at a local customer, or yeah, they're not a customer of ours, but they're a big financial services house here in the Philadelphia area. And I had about a couple of hundred people in there, and I said, "How many of you have liberal arts backgrounds?" And more than half of them raised their hand. And I said, "This is your time.
Mm-hmm.
AI is making
Yeah.
your backgrounds relevant for the next generation of programming
Absolutely.
systems.
Yeah.
So this is your time." So I would say to anybody in your viewing or listening,
Yeah.
hey, whatever your background is, you can be generalist, you can be, or you can be a specialist. Whatever your angle is, you're going to have a chance to make your world work,
Mm.
provided you have logic. And then I'm going to add one more:
Mm.
curiosity. Be curious about the world.
Yes. Start with the whys or the first principles, always.
First principles, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Love it. And just pivoting a little bit in your current role, I see that you do a lot of research, you read a lot of research papers. And I was doing a little bit of, I also read a lot and, trying to find these new startups which are building cool AI stuff. And whenever I go to their LinkedIn page, I see that you already follow them. And I'm always wondering, like, how does he beat me every time? Like, how do you stay ahead of the curve? On top of everything that you do in your daily job, you are actively looking for new ideas, new research papers, but is there a methodology you follow to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, there's not well, I wake up at 4 in the morning. I
Okay.
go to bed at about 10 at night or 11, maybe later sometimes. That'll adjust my time from 4 to 5 at wake up. But one of the first things I do when I wake up is I download and read a paper um, that I get off of archive, or that I see in my feed that looks interesting. And actually, my methodology is not to read the paper. I read the abstract and see if it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting enough to go on. And then what I like doing with that too is uh, put put the paper through one of the LLMs that I use, so I
Mm.
can summarize all of the salient points.
Right.
And then I prompt, I have my prompts that are already focused on things like, ask me questions to make sure I understand, the article, that sort of thing, so that I
Mm.
get a really good intuition and understanding of what the paper entails.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from that point, then I go and start to research, throughout the course of the day. I'll look up different companies that are affiliated with the paper, or technologies that incorporate ideas from the paper. And then that's how, I kind of find different um, different technologies, the bleeding edge of where research is going, and then maybe the companies or the people, the personas that are involved with those particular technologies. And so you had a guest on your show from a company called Martian, just as an example. Um, I did not find them there. I actually went to an AI, a Pinecone conference
Mm.
last year, and met them and a lot of others as well. So the kind of networking that you do
Right.
is also one of my approaches to finding companies as well. But usually I target where I want to go based
Mm.
on where research I think is headed towards, and where the market needs different types of this technology.
Mm-hmm.
So the 3 areas that I'm really hung up on right now are answering the question, Are transformers the answer? Yes or
Mm,
no? Are vector databases the only game in town when it comes to indexing and providing, a robust RAG, or
right.
their combinations that could be used? And in terms of data, what are the most effective types of pipeline tools that are going to be
Mm,
necessary for data to be trusted, especially when, agents scale, just as an example. And
right.
so those that is where my head's at the moment, but I'm constantly on the lookout for
Mm,
new technology and the companies that are behind that technology, or the academic institutions that are behind the
right.
technology as well.
Yeah, love it. I mean, certain aspects we can definitely take away, like reading research papers and putting it in LLMs, but 4 a.m. is something I don't know most of our guests will be able to follow. Um, but Okay, interesting. So I also want to know that, that we see a lot of innovation in AI companies, and you mentioned like a lot of schools and colleges also. Like I have seen events in Stanford where, these 18-year-olds are building like billion-dollar companies and multi-million-dollar companies. But sometimes I also feel like some of these companies are like riding the wave. Like I really appreciate deep tech AI right now because applied AI does has a bubble. I feel it's my personal opinion. And if you build on top of applied AI, I don't know how much it can withstand. So any thoughts on that? Like all of these companies that are coming up and saying that, hey, we'll add a layer on top of the LLM and build this for you. Is that going to be sustainable, or we should focus more on deep tech and changing, like you said, transformers? Is it the best, or there could be something better than that?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I'm circumspect of companies that build their whole thesis is built on something like RAG models, as an example.
Mm,
Just on that point, if the company in my so let me back up. Yes, I think deep research into artificial intelligence is important. I
mm,
think it's probably the area where you can apply first principles and
yeah.
build something entirely new. So I'm completely in agreement there. I do like, sort of the applied uses of the current state of technology that are out there today.
Mm-hmm.
However, now going to my point, if you're a company, in my opinion, that is building your entire future off of a
Mm,
RAG-based model alone,
yeah.
I think you're going to be disrupted, because the tooling is getting better so much quicker
Mm-hmm.
around RAG-based implementations. Just as an example, construct a RAG
Right.
based pipeline, and you understand different types of AI that are going to be necessary in your pipelines, and you put that
Mm,
ensemble together, and then you can essentially ingest data, get context, ground your LLM or LLM ensemble, and then
mm,
produce actionable information on the output of the LLM, and
mm-hmm.
that's your whole model. You're probably going to need to do something unique on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we do at Boomi partner, and this isn't a Boomi conversation, but we at Boomi and others in our industry partner with companies that have really strong domain expertise.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit different. If you have domain expertise in a certain area that is above and beyond what the normal sort of supply chain or finance or
Right.
healthcare, something like that, where you've built blueprints and templates, and you really understand parts of the market that are super, super
Yeah.
specific.
Yeah.
That's a different story. However, if you're coming out with general purpose RAG-based technology and that's where you're building your company, I would
Mm,
say you might want to sort of look ahead
yeah.
to different types of business models, as an
Mm,
example, because there are hundreds of these companies. Or here's another one. If any of your listeners or viewers are looking at something like being a prompt engineer, I think being a prompt engineer is more of a function of a job, not a
an
role
entire. True.
itself.
It.
And so it is great to understand how to prompt.
Mm,
Um, I think it's a skill more than it is a vocation. So it's important that any of your listeners looking at that probably want to look at prompt engineering as a function for their
mm,
role, not the actual vocation itself, which may be a completely unpopular statement to make right now, but I'm okay with being unpopular. I think it's a feature of a role, not the actual job.
Absolutely. Yeah,
The
absolutely. I completely agree with you. So what I'm hearing is that you're saying if you're building something as simple as like using RAG based or using an existing LLM, adding a layer on top of it and uh, calling it a product, that's not enough to sustain in the long term. You need to come up with something more novel and something more unique that can keep you in the long run.
Yeah, I would say that unless you have specific domain expertise
Correct.
that no one could reproduce, because that
Mhm.
that would be your moat at that point.
Mm,
And then you could use this technology to enable, innovations that, go along with what you're strong at.
mm,
But absent that, I would say if you're just coming out with a RAG-based approach to things you've done that are pretty standard,
mm.
yep, I would say it might be wise to look at different angles to make your tech a little stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. So you mentioned about Boomi, and I wanted to ask, at Boomi Innovation, we are doing a lot to catch up with the AI wave and building a lot of things. But this is a issue with not just most of the companies. It's like AI adoption is not necessarily as fast-paced as the advancement in AI. Like we still are figuring out. In fact, I read somewhere that Google had a better model ready because of the amount of data they have before ChatGPT was released. But the reason they were not able to deploy it because of scalability, security, and other issues, the ML ops or LLM ops issues. So, do you think that is an area with Boomi or any of the companies should focus on because the scale at which AI is happening is not necessarily matching the AI adoption and AI deployment?
Yeah, we have a whole focus on practical AI through Boomi. Um, I think there if you're going to build your own pipelines that use AI as sort of a computational layer within those pipelines. It's going to do things that make things easier for your pipeline
Mm,
goals to be realized, or your goals in general to be realized. It's important to not just look at the model. It's important to look at your data and your process. And with the process piece of
right.
that equation, it's important to understand things like, okay, what happens not just at a security level, but what about resilience? What
Mm,
happens if my pipeline goes down? Do I have a backup?
mm,
Is it automated? Is it active active? Is it active passive? How much data can I lose, or how much time can I lose if I have an infrastructure issue?
right.
Unfortunately, cloud helps out with a lot of that. The platforms that our customers adopt, and even within our industry and our competitors within industry, one of the reasons why, our particular industry historically is becoming more widely adopted is
Right.
because integration is more than just about connecting different endpoints. It's about, hey,
Mm,
what happens when the failover is required, or
mm,
our active path goes down. And then it's things like, okay, what type of security moat do I have? How well do I protect consumer data, if I even see data at all? Is my architecture such that I can design in the cloud and run anywhere behind my firewall if I choose
mm,
to? How do I scale, my execution engine, my runtimes in a way that's going to be meaningful? These are things that model builders may not be thinking of because they're
right.
focused on, having, a world-class model to build.
Mm,
But using that world-class model is, as I point out, is a lot like a jet engine. You
mm,
have this amazing piece of technology that can propel you through space-time. And
mm,
um, and if you have this engine that's super optimized, but you don't have an engine casing to put it in, and a
right.
fuselage to attach that engine casing to, and a pair of wings that go along with that fuselage, and onboard systems
Mm,
that are, in the airplane, those engines are really nothing more than a fancy hair dryer. And so,
yeah. Yeah.
it's important to understand the whole system, and that's why it's important to have tools like what we offer in our
Mm,
company, and also, our competitors too. They offer similar things. Although I'll argue that our mousetrap is pretty darn good for a number of reasons that our competition can't really compete with. But still,
mm,
any of us provides a layer of that infrastructure that allows you to take advantage of the engine.
mm,
But we also need to consider things like, okay, how do we apply data services as well?
Mm.
Those are like onboard systems inside of the airplane, not just the
Right.
airplane itself. And so
Yeah.
those are things that we have in our platform that help make AI real. So if folks
Mm.
are looking to understand how to make AI practical,
Mm.
I would argue that platforms like ours are connecting systems so that your data can be exposed for those AI, running them through data checks for data quality assurance, that sort of thing, so you can feed consistent amount of data into that pipeline.
Mm.
Then the AI can perform action on your, and with the context in mind
Right.
of your own, of the way that you view the world in your particular company. And so those are the kinds of
Mm.
things that I like to say to the rest of the world.
Love it. And I love the aircraft analogy. So I love planes. So yeah. Do you have a pilot license by any chance?
I don't have a pilot license, but I've been a big um, an aircraft fan. I'm an aircraft enthusiast, let's say,
Yeah, and we have more to chat. I am an aviation expert, fan as well. So yeah,
Hmm,
nice.
nice.
Um,
This is the part of getting to know each other even better. It's fun to talk about this kind of thing.
yeah, hobbies and interest. Love it, love it. So, you talked a little bit about Boomi, and I want to know if you could share a little bit more about Boomi AI and if one project, if you want to dive deep and share with our listeners and viewers, what's something cool that Boomi is building in the AI space?
Yeah, so our strategy, inside of Boomi, there's AI in the platform, and then there's using the Boomi platform for practical AI orchestration. And so on the innovation side, we're focused on the latter. We're taking Boomi and all of the parts that are there today, um, and applying that towards building RAG-based models, um, you know, chatbots or virtual assistants, summarization systems, content creation systems,
Mm.
recommender systems, even agents, all of these things we're building there. So there are a lot of really cool applications that you can do with the Boomi platform out of the box today. Um, the in the platform things that are happening, which I believe your group is responsible for, is
Right.
just pouring accelerant on what we're able to do with the platform today. So
Mm-hmm.
while you're helping the developer experience, we're actually attaching to the business case right away, so we can
Mm-hmm.
help the developer meet the business need even quicker. With Boomi AI. The one thing that I'll say that I absolutely love about some of the features that are in the platform right now that your teams are building. I got to say, documentation is something that every developer just loves. And I'm
Mm.
kidding. They don't love it at all. And the fact that we have this as an automated
Yeah.
way to write, natural language documentation for Boomi-based processes
Mm.
is one of many examples of how developers, can take the mundane aspects out of their job and just focus on building,
Mm.
and still have documented evidence of what they're doing and why they're doing it. So
Yeah.
that to me is really cool. And on our side of the equation, my colleagues are building faster than ever. Um, these types of recipes and recipes that are just going to enable customers to put AI into production a lot faster than I've ever seen before. Like
Mm.
not just a chatbot, but a semantically based chatbot that
Yeah.
can look up part numbers and guide customers through a process that's going to be
Mm.
lead to a wonderful experience. And we're already seeing this now with the adoption of a Boomi based RAG system that's
Mm-hmm.
very advanced for what the implementation was. The really cool thing about this, Swagata, is that people who had no knowledge of RAG before,
Yeah.
or how LLMs really worked or vector databases worked, they
Mm.
now have a very strong intuition and understanding of this,
Mm.
and they're actually applying into production lots of different RAG-based solutions that we
Wow.
built just a couple of months ago. So
Wow.
this is moving
Very
fast.
fast.
So I love that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, please check out Boomi AI to all the listeners and viewers. We are building some really cool stuff, so make sure to check it out.
Yeah, discover.boomi.com. If you go there, you can
Thank you.
see some really cool stuff. Oh, it's so good. Even internally, we're I got to say this. I got to shout out to the information team. So, in organizations that I've worked for over the past 25 years, engineering, product, if there is an innovation group or the office of the
Mm,
CTO, that, and inside of information systems or information technology group, those who are responsible for providing the back office systems for the employees, we all communicate. I think the
mm.
biggest advancement has nothing to do with technology, but the
Agreed.
biggest advancement in innovation is we're all talking to each other.
Agreed.
That's
Agreed.
awesome. Awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The collaboration between our teams, and I'm sure you collaborating with different teams within Boomi, is what has led to this kind of phenomenal growth in the past couple of months.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We've even built an internal RAG-based chatbot with all Boomi products and exposed LLMs
Mm.
and vector databases and such. Basically, that was stood up inside of a week. It went from zero prototype in a couple of days, and then into user acceptance, I think in 2 weeks. That was the
Wow.
time.
Wow.
Yeah, and then they had to put the security wrappers and all of that around it, which took a little bit longer to deploy. But going from nothing to something internally that's really basically salespeople and systems engineers, pre-sale systems engineers use it today as our own internal system to
Mm.
show what a customer could have with Boomi
Right.
now, because we're doing it. So it's
Yeah,
pretty neat.
it is. It's awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I have a different kind of question now, since I feel we want to pivot a little bit from the technical questions. So I feel like mentorship is very important for anybody, not just in the field of AI. So can you share what role mentorship has played in your career, both as a mentor and as a mentee?
Absolutely. I'll go with a mentee first. Um, I was very deliberate on picking my mentors. So folks who have the experience in the area that you think you're interested in are
Mhm.
critical, and identifying them is not always easy. One way that I did that was reading, number one.
Yeah.
Whether if it's somebody in the company that I'm interested in, if that person is writing a lot or uh, publishing in some way, now it's podcasts or
Mhm.
videos or something like this. But if they're writing, I'm going to pay attention to that.
Mhm.
I'm also going to pay attention to different organizations within the company. There are certain ERGs where the leaders of those ERGs are supporting. I want to know why. Um,
Mm.
like sustainability or being an ally for LGBT,
Mm.
plus, or any of the groups, ERGs that are in there. There are great mentors that
Right.
lurk in those ERGs. So
Mm.
I've always sought those types of folks out. And then also, of course, leaders. You'll be
Mm.
surprised at how few, how little resistance you'll get from going to a leader,
Mm.
even at the C level, to get
Mm.
them to mentor you. And so when I was young in my career, I sought out people who were at that level. And very rarely was a door closed just because I
Mm.
was young in my career. So I would say have the courage to ask the question, um, courage
Mm.
over comfort. Go to
Mm.
your C levels if somebody you respect at the C level and ask them to mentor you. And that's
Mm.
helpful. And then also different groups that you can reach out to in your
Mhm.
community, as you mentioned before.
Yeah.
Um, I have made, I have mentors even to this day, and some of them are there. My computer science professors,
Mm.
mentors. There are two, maybe arguably three, with whom I still have regular contact from decades ago. And I'll still ask them questions about how they
Mm.
perceive the world and that sort of thing. And then when it's your turn to become a mentor as well, let me just say, as a mentee, you want people who are going to not just reflect the values you have. That's a good starting point, but you want them to challenge you.
Yeah.
Somebody who is an active participant in your development in some
Mm.
way, challenge your thinking, uh,
Mm.
challenge your logic,
Mhm.
making sure that you are on the path that you want to be, not that
Mm.
they want you to be necessarily.
Mhm. Mhm.
So mentorship is not about people pleasing. Mentorship is about you getting information so that you can better yourself. And hopefully society will benefit from you, tapping into your own genius. As
Mm.
a mentor, um, my role is to provide spark to ideas.
Yeah.
And, I am here to be more curious and less judgmental. Like my job is not to judge people who come to
Mm.
me. My job is to be curious as to why,
Mm.
what sort of spins their bow tie, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as a mentor, I absolutely love, being a part of the development of ideas, thoughts
Mm.
that somebody has.
Yeah.
And you're on the patent committee. You see it all of the time too. Somebody comes in with a good idea.
Mm.
The best way to make sure that that idea comes into life is to give them support and to really help them think
Absolutely.
through it,
Yeah.
not to shoot them down. And
Yeah.
so I think we all do a good job there. And as mentors, we also need to do the same thing in somebody's personal life as we get to know them and their career development.
Mm.
There's one guy, one person that I'm thinking of right now who's now going through a master's program at a university. He came in as an intern about 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he started out very young and very unknowledgeable about how, practical programming worked in our world, and
Mm.
didn't understand how customers worked, all of that stuff. But he had this grand idea that he wants to be a CEO. And I
Mm.
think I think he will be at
Mm.
some point, or at least he'll be a leader in an organization. My job with that person was to cultivate curiosity, was to ask
Mm.
was to make sure that whatever plan that he wanted, he could be coached along the way,
Right.
without judgment. And he came to me for advice over and over these last 5 years, and one of them was,
Mm.
should I go to grad school or not?
Mm.
And as a mentor and as now somebody who is really valuable in our company, it would have been really easy to say, well, you don't really need it or whatever. No,
Mm.
that's as a mentor, it's our job to foster curiosity and to provide a safe space for our mentees to
Absolutely.
explore their thoughts and ideas and to protect that. And as long as they're not going to harm themselves or others, your conversation, that's between you two.
Agreed.
And that's how I treat my mentees. And I've got a good crop of mentees now, and
Mm.
I'm honored to be their mentor. It's wonderful. What an experience.
Absolutely. And definitely plus one on reaching out to C-level or anybody. Don't let that imposter syndrome, because I personally did that and realized like, hey, it's not as intimidating as I thought. And what's the worst that could happen? They're gonna say, no, I don't have time or something. It's still better, worth a shot.
And even if they say that once, one thing I learned in my sales career is it takes what, 9 no's to get to a yes. So just be persistent.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can feel that it's annoying, but
Mm.
it's not. If you want to get information out of this world, it's your opportunity to do so. We have a limited amount of time that we're here. So let's stoke the coals of our curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, love it. Loved your answers. In the interest of time, I want to pivot to our last segment, which is the lightning round. So I'm going to ask you 10 questions and you have to answer it fast with fire, hopefully.
Okay.
Uh, no pressure. What's the first question? What's the most exciting AI development you worked on recently?
Yeah, definitely getting this first RAG solution out into the real world. Practical, a few months ago. It was practical. It worked well. It almost went according to plan, but we made the adjustments quickly. And a
Hmm.
whole bunch of people were involved in it. It was it was a great testament to great engineering on the back end and great innovation with the customer.
Awesome. Favorite programming language?
Python, hands down.
Yeah. One book you would recommend, your
Oh,
favorite book. Need not be AI's, your like
yeah.
favorite book.
Yeah, I would say there are a lot of them, but Hackers and Painters by Paul Graham would be
Mm.
up there for sure.
Okay. Okay. Noted. Um, the biggest myth about AI that you would like to debunk.
That it's sentient.
Mm.
Um, I don't believe that it's sentient at the moment. I think I'm gonna side unpopularly with Jan LeCun at the moment. But but I don't think that we're that far off from something that resembles AGI.
AGI. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Your go-to productivity tool or software or hack or habit.
Well, that changes a lot these days, but I would have told you Anaconda. That changed my life on the programming front.
Mm,
Just with, that platform is pretty robust from a Python point of view. But I honestly would say probably some LLM at this point. I'm playing a lot with Perplexity at the moment.
mm.
Um,
I love
like
Perplexity too. Yeah.
Perplexity is great because it's doing things that other LLMs don't. So you ask a question, it's actually citing where it's getting all of its information. So it's
Yeah.
like an inbuilt RAG, and it's actually asking you for more questions.
Mm,
Like if you have a curious mind, Perplexity sort of helps. And shameless plug to my colleague Chris Capetta, who built something very Perplexity-like that's on Discover right now.
mhm.
It's a different way to search. And but I think Perplexity is something that I'm really into at the moment.
Love it. Yeah. Most influential figure in your career, or I mean, not somebody you know personally, but someone you look up to.
Oof, there's so many. You know, I have different answers for different stages of my life, but one person that I'm listening to pretty consistently these days, two people I'll give you on their podcasts, Lex Friedman
Yeah.
and Sean Carroll.
Mm,
They're my two absolute favorites. Sean Carroll in physics, if you want to really understand physics or any subject, his
mm,
podcast is it's called the Mindscape Podcast. Totally
mm.
recommend it. And then Lex Friedman, of course,
Yeah.
is just teaching us all to be better humans and to have a little empathy for no matter what the issue is.
Yeah.
I really appreciate
I
Lex.
like his podcast. Yeah. I'm gonna check out the other one. It's
Sean
called
Carroll.
the Okay. Noted.
Yeah.
Awesome. One piece of advice for aspiring young AI professionals.
Yeah. I would say as AI becomes more prolific, understand art with science and
Mm.
like really truly try to tap in what it means to be human. Empathy and love,
Goes
those
a
sorts
long
of
way.
things really it's everything. So if in your development you can have not you can develop with empathy in mind, that ultimately is what I would recommend.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. How do you unwind after a long day of work?
Mm. So I like to play guitar,
Oh,
um,
wow,
and I like to
lot in
hike,
common.
and I like to read.
Mm.
Those are my three pastimes. My kids are now old enough to where they're doing their own thing, so I would have answered, well, hanging out with my kids, but they like to hang out with their friends as new adults. But playing guitar is something that kind of unwinds me.
Are you
So
part of the Slack channel, Guitar Peeps?
I'm not. I
Gonna,
didn't know there was one.
there's one. Every Tuesday we have a
So thank you.
class.
Do you play guitar?
I do. I'm not very good, but I do.
Yeah, I'm not good either, but you know what? It doesn't, good is what good does. I don't know.
Yeah,
You practice, you play, you unwind.
yeah,
I play for me. I don't play for anybody else.
yeah.
So
Awesome. I'll add you to that Slack group.
thank you.
Um, if you weren't in tech, what field would you be working in?
I would be in physics. I would be a professor.
Oh.
And yeah, in fact, I think when I'm done with my tech career, which hopefully, I'm of the Kurzweilian group of we're going to live for hundreds of years type. I think we'll have a chance to reinvent ourselves, especially in the not too distant future. I think I would be teaching some subject, either physics or the philosophy of physics, and I would
Mm.
like to do this at a university level and do some
I
really
can
killer research.
I can totally see you doing that. Awesome. Well, that was all. Before we wrap up, do you want to share any takeaways, any parting thoughts with the audience?
Yeah, first of all, this has been awesome. So much fun. And I'll say for the audience, um, you know, I said develop with empathy, and I mean that wholly. I think this is our time, and as humans, to really allow what it means to be human to come out in the tech that we produce. And this is also a time for anybody to be a
Yeah.
developer as well. I mean,
AI is democratized. Yeah.
totally democratized, and it's going to get more so, I think. Still, this is a very powerful tool that we can all use for the good. And I think if we can learn to do that, seriously, there could be some real abundance for everybody on the planet. And that's what I'm hopeful for. So please, when you're building the future, build it with humans in mind.
Build with
Be
empathy.
kind.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael.